Welcome. The BoreCore archive is a collection of slow, methodical recordings of technical processes and perfectly boring routines designed to help you relax and fall asleep. New procedures are added regularly, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Time to relax, close your eyes, and take it on down to Sleepy Town.
Welcome to a complete operational guide to the maintenance, calibration, troubleshooting, and ongoing care of the Multifunction Office Printer, or the machine that is never broken until you need it. You are the person responsible for the office printer. This title was not given to you formally. There was no ceremony. There was no change to your job description. One day, the printer stopped working, and the people around you looked at you instead of at each other, and you went to look at the printer, and you fixed it. And from that moment, you were the person responsible for the office printer. This is how most important responsibilities are assigned. The printer you are responsible for is a multifunction laser printer, also called an MFP, which stands for multifunction peripheral. It prints, it copies, it scans. In some configurations, it also sends and receives faxes, which is a technology that continues to exist in certain industries and government offices for reasons that are discussed elsewhere. Your printer is connected to the office network, serves between 8 and 30 users depending on the day, and is expected to produce output of consistent quality on demand, without error, without delay, and without requiring anyone's attention until something goes wrong, at which point it requires your attention specifically. This is not a reasonable set of expectations for a piece of mechanical and electronic equipment that processes thousands of sheets of paper per month, contains moving parts that wear with use, relies on consumable materials that deplete at variable rates, and sits in an environment that is too warm in summer, too dry in winter, and always slightly dusty. The expectations are, however, the expectations. You manage the gap between the expectations and the reality. You do this with an understanding of how the machine works, a regular maintenance schedule, a stock of the correct consumables, and a willingness to open access panels that other people have been told not to open. The multifunction laser printer is a more complex machine than it appears from the outside. From the outside, it is a large beige or gray box with a paper tray, a control panel, and an output tray. From the inside, it is a system of precisely coordinated mechanical, thermal, and electrostatic processes that together reproduce an image on a sheet of paper with extraordinary precision, and at a speed that, if you have ever thought carefully about it, is genuinely remarkable. We will think carefully about it. We will also think carefully about what to do when it jams, when it streaks, when it fades, when it smears, when it reports an error that makes no obvious sense, and when it produces a sound that it has never produced before, and that no one can adequately describe. Your shift, for the purposes of this script, is a full working day during which you will conduct the monthly maintenance procedures, respond to 2 printing incidents, calibrate the color output, manage the toner supply, and document everything in the printer maintenance log. There is a printer maintenance log, You started it yourself. You are the only person who writes in it. This does not make it less necessary. Let us begin. Before you can maintain a laser printer effectively, you must understand what it does. This is not a general principle about maintenance. It is a specific principle about laser printers because the laser printing process is a chain of dependent steps, each of which can fail independently, and the symptom of a failure at any step is diagnostic of that step if you understand the chain. You understand the chain. This is why people look at you. The laser printing process begins before the paper moves. It begins with the photoconductor drum, also called the imaging drum or the OPC drum, where OPC stands for organic photoconductor. The drum is a cylindrical roller coated with a material that is electrically conductive when exposed to light and electrically insulating in darkness. It is the central component of the electrophotographic process, which is the technical name for what a laser printer does. The drum rotates throughout the printing process, and every step in the process happens to the drum's surface as it rotates past the relevant station. Step 1 is charging. A component called the primary charge roller, or corona wire in older printers, applies a uniform high-voltage negative electrostatic charge to the entire surface of the drum as it rotates. The drum surface is now uniformly charged, approximately negative 600 volts. It is like a uniformly magnetized surface, except the force is electrostatic rather than magnetic. The charge is invisible. The drum looks the same as it did before charging. This is fine. The charge is there. Step 2 is exposing. A laser diode, controlled by the printer's image processing electronics, fires a precisely modulated beam of light at the charged drum surface. Where the laser strikes the drum, the photoconductor material becomes conductive and the negative charge dissipates. Where the laser does not strike, the charge remains. The laser traces the image to be printed across the rotating drum surface line by line, at speeds measured in thousands of lines per second, selectively discharging the drum in the pattern of the image. The image now exists on the drum as a pattern of charged and discharged areas. It is an electrostatic latent image. It is invisible. It is, at this moment, the most important pattern in the room. Step 3 is developing. A component called the developer unit brings toner into contact with the drum surface. Toner is not ink. Toner is a fine powder composed of tiny particles of pigment bonded to a thermoplastic resin, typically a polyester, along with various additives that control the powder's flow, its charge characteristics, and its fusing behavior. The toner particles carry a negative electrostatic charge. When they are brought close to the drum surface, the charged areas of the drum, which are also negatively charged, repel the toner. The discharged areas, the areas where the laser struck, have less negative charge and attract the toner. The toner particles adhere to the discharged areas of the drum, developing the latent image into a visible toner image. The image is now on the drum in toner. It is still not on paper. It is on a rotating drum, held there by electrostatic force, which is not a very strong force. Step 4 is transferring. The paper is fed from the paper tray along a precise path to a point where it makes contact with the drum surface. A transfer roller or transfer belt behind the paper applies a positive charge to the back of the paper. The toner on the drum, which is negatively charged, is attracted to the positively charged paper and transfers from the drum surface to the paper surface. The paper now has toner on it in the pattern of the image. The toner is resting on the paper surface, held by weak electrostatic attraction. If you touched the paper at this point, the toner would smear. Fortunately, you do not touch the paper at this point, and neither does anything else, because the paper is moving very quickly. Step 5 is fusing. The paper, with its loose toner image, passes through the fuser unit. The fuser unit consists of a heated roller and a pressure roller. The heated roller is typically a metal or ceramic core surrounded by a thin layer of heat-resistant elastomer, heated to a temperature between 160 and 200 degrees Celsius by an internal halogen lamp or a ceramic heating element. As the paper passes through the nip point between the heated roller and the pressure roller, the heat melts the thermoplastic resin in the toner particles, which flow together and bond to the paper fibers under the pressure of the rollers. The toner is now permanently bonded to the paper. The image is fixed. This is why a laser-printed document does not smear when you run your finger across it. The toner has been melted into the paper surface. This is also why the paper is warm when it comes out of the printer. The fuser runs at nearly the temperature of a cup of coffee, and the paper has just passed through it. Step 6 is cleaning. After the toner image transfers from the drum to the paper, a small amount of toner remains on the drum surface. A cleaning blade, a thin strip of polyurethane rubber, scrapes this residual toner from the drum as it continues to rotate, collecting it in a waste toner reservoir. The drum is then ready to be charged again, and the cycle repeats. A single revolution of the drum accommodates one printed band of the image. The drum revolves many times for a single page, many hundreds of thousands of times over the life of the drum. You know all of this. You have known it for several years. Understanding these 6 steps means that when a page comes out of the printer with a long vertical streak, you know immediately that the streak is most likely caused by a scratch or a deposit on the drum surface, because a defect on the drum surface reappears at regular intervals corresponding to the drum's circumference, not as a streak, but as a repeating mark, unless it is a contamination on the cleaning blade, in which case it appears as a continuous streak. You make this distinction automatically and correctly. This is why people look at you. You begin the monthly maintenance procedure. You have scheduled this for first thing in the morning on the first working day of the month, before the office fills and before the print queue accumulates. The printer is currently idle. The warm-up cycle completed when you powered on the office systems at 8. The printer's control panel shows a green ready indicator. You acknowledge acknowledge this. The printer is ready. You are about to give it more to think about. You retrieve the printer maintenance kit from the supply cabinet. The maintenance kit contains a new Fuser roller cleaning pad, a bottle of approved isopropyl alcohol solution at 70% concentration, a pack of lint-free cloths, a can of compressed air with a narrow extension nozzle, a soft bristled brush approximately 2 centimeters wide, replacement feed rollers in a sealed bag, and a fresh drum cleaning sheet. You lay these items on the small table beside the printer. You wash your hands before beginning. Skin oils transferred to internal printer components can cause print quality problems. This is not a precaution unique to printer maintenance. It is good practice for working with any precision equipment. You open the printer's main access panel. The main access panel on most multifunction laser printers is on the front or right side of the unit and provides access to the toner cartridges and, in some models, the drum unit. Your printer is a model in which the toner cartridges and drum unit are separate components, which is the configuration preferred for maintenance purposes, because it allows the drum to be replaced independently of the toner, reducing cost and allowing finer control over when each component is replaced. In printers where the toner and drum are integrated in a single cartridge, the drum is replaced every time the toner runs out, regardless of the drum's actual condition. This is more convenient and more expensive. You check the toner levels. The control panel displays the estimated toner remaining for each cartridge as a percentage. Your printer is a color laser printer with 4 toner cartridges: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. The black toner is at 31%, which is sufficient for continued use, but low enough that you note it for reorder. The colored toners are at 44, 58, and 67%. The colored toners deplete at different rates, depending on the content being printed. A month of predominantly text documents consumes black toner significantly faster than colored toner. A month with several large format, color print jobs would show a different pattern. The toner levels this month reflect a predominantly text workload with occasional color documents. This is consistent with what you know of this month's Office output. You do not replace the black toner today. 31% is sufficient for continued operation, and replacing a cartridge that still has usable toner wastes the remaining toner and costs money. You will reorder a replacement cartridge today so that it arrives before the current cartridge is depleted. The point at which to order a replacement is not the point at which the cartridge is empty. It is the point at which the remaining supply is insufficient to bridge the gap between now and the delivery of a replacement. For a next business day delivery arrangement, a toner level below 20% is a reasonable reorder trigger. For a longer supply chain, the trigger should be higher. Your reorder arrangement is next business day. You will reorder when the level reaches 20%, which at current consumption rates will be in approximately 4 to 6 working days. You note this in the printer maintenance log. and set a calendar reminder for 4 days from now. You close the toner access panel and open the lower access panel, which provides access to the paper feed mechanism. The feed mechanism is the system of rollers and guides that takes paper from the paper tray and moves it along the paper path to the drum and fuser. It is the part of the printer most directly responsible for paper jams, and it is the part most improved by regular cleaning. You remove the paper from the main paper tray and set it aside. You use the compressed air can with the narrow nozzle to blow loose paper dust and debris from the tray and from the visible portions of the feed mechanism. You do this at a distance of approximately 30 centimeters, using short bursts rather than continuous flow to avoid driving debris deeper into the mechanism. Paper dust is an inevitable byproduct of handling paper at speed. It accumulates on rollers, on guides, and in the corners of trays, and over time, it can interfere with the grip of the feed rollers and contribute to misfeeds and jams. Regular removal of this dust is straightforward preventive maintenance. You inspect the feed rollers. The feed rollers are rubber rollers that contact the top sheet of paper in the tray and pull it into the feed path. The rubber compound of the rollers is formulated to provide consistent grip on paper surfaces, but it degrades over time. The rubber hardens, develops a glazed surface, or becomes contaminated with paper dust and releases agents from the paper surface, all of which reduce its grip. A feed roller that has lost its grip is a feed roller that causes misfeeds. The printer attempts to pull a sheet of paper, the roller slips, and the page either does not feed at all or feeds crookedly. You pinch the feed roller between 2 fingers and rotate it, feeling the surface texture. A healthy feed roller has a slightly tacky surface texture, like the eraser end of a new pencil. This roller has a smooth, slightly shiny surface that slips under your fingers without resistance. This is a glazed roller. You wipe it with a lint-free cloth dampened with the isopropyl alcohol solution. The alcohol dissolves the surface contaminants and restores some tactile grip. You rotate the roller as you wipe to reach the full circumference. After cleaning, the surface feels improved, but not fully restored. The roller is a candidate for replacement. You consult the printer's maintenance schedule, which specifies that feed rollers should be replaced every 100,000 pages or every 2 years, whichever comes first. You check the page count in the printer's service menu. 87,400 pages since the last roller replacement. Not yet at the replacement threshold, but close. You note it in the maintenance log. Feed rollers showing surface glazing, cleaning performed. Recommend replacement at next scheduled maintenance, or at 100,000 page count. The paper path is the route that paper follows through the printer from the input tray to the output tray. In a typical multifunction laser printer, this path includes the feed tray, the feed rollers, the registration rollers, the transfer zone where the toner image is applied to the paper, the fuser unit, the exit rollers, and the output tray. full length of this path in a desktop laser printer is approximately 80 to 100 centimeters, rooted in a curve or an S shape within the printer's body. Paper travels this path in approximately 2 to 3 seconds during normal operation. In that time, it passes between multiple pairs of rollers, around multiple curves, and through a fuser operating at nearly 200 degrees Celsius. The precision with which paper makes this journey without wrinkling, tearing, or jamming is a function of the precision of the paper path geometry and the condition of its components. You use the soft brush to clean the registration rollers, which are the rollers that align the paper precisely before it enters the transfer zone. Correct registration means the image is placed accurately on the page. If you ask for 1-inch margins, the image should be printed with 1-inch margins, not 1 1/4 on one side and 3/4 on the other. Registration rollers work by pausing the paper against a stationary roller pair, allowing the leading edge of the paper to align straight across the full width, and then releasing it at the precise moment needed to synchronize with the rotating drum. This synchronization is timed to within milliseconds. A registration roller with debris on its surface can alter the timing slightly, causing the image to be placed fractionally off position. Over many pages, this becomes visible as a pattern of slightly misaligned output. You brush the registration roller surfaces and use the compressed air to clear the resulting debris from the paper path. You run a lint-free cloth along the paper guides, the plastic or metal edges that keep the paper traveling in the correct plane as it moves through the path. Paper guides accumulate the same paper dust as the rollers, and a contaminated guide can cause paper to skew slightly as it moves, which in turn causes skewed printing, or in more pronounced cases, a jam. You access the fuser area with appropriate caution. The fuser is a heat source and should not be touched immediately after the printer has been in use. You powered the printer on approximately 30 minutes ago, and it has been in standby since the warm-up cycle. In standby mode, modern laser printers reduce the fuser temperature to an energy-saving low-heat state, but the fuser roller is still warm. You allow 5 additional minutes before working near it. The fuser roller is the component most responsible for the quality of the final print. The heated roller surface, which is coated with a non-stick fluoropolymer material similar to PTFE, polytetrafluoroethylene, must be clean and undamaged to produce consistent fusing. Contamination on the fuser roller surface from paper fibers, toner residue, or foreign material transfers to every page that passes through the fuser, producing a regularly repeating offset mark or smear on printed output. This type of defect is called fuser contamination and is one of the more distinctive print quality problems because the contamination mark repeats at an interval exactly equal to the circumference of the fuser roller, which in most desktop printers is approximately 7 to 9 centimeters. If you measure the distance between repeating marks on a contaminated page and find it corresponds to the fusor roller circumference in your printer's service manual, you have identified the cause precisely. You apply the fusor cleaning pad to the cooled fusor roller surface, rotating the roller manually using the gear mechanism accessible from the access panel and wiping the full circumference of the roller. The cleaning pad is a dry pad specifically formulated to remove toner contamination from fusor surfaces without damaging the fluoropolymer coating. You do not use any liquid solvent on the fusor roller. Solvents can damage the fluoropolymer coating, which is thin and not easily replaced. A damaged fusor roller surface causes persistent print quality problems and requires fusor unit replacement, which is an expensive repair. You use the approved dry cleaning pad. You rotate the roller fully twice. You examine the pad. It has accumulated a faint brownish residue, which is toner and paper fiber from the roller surface. This level of contamination is consistent with normal use and does not indicate a problem. You dispose of the used pad in the bin. You use the brush to clean the exit rollers and the output tray interior. The exit rollers propel the finished page from the fusor zone to the output tray, and they accumulate paper dust and occasionally toner residue from pages that have passed through a warm fusor and whose toner has not yet fully cooled. The output tray itself accumulates dust, and the paper sizing compounds that transfer from the surfaces of freshly printed pages. These compounds are harmless, but their accumulation is visible and reflects on the general maintenance standard of the machine. You wipe the output tray interior with a dry, lint-free cloth. It is now clean. It will not remain clean indefinitely, but it is clean now. You reload the paper tray. You note that the paper stack is partially depleted. There are approximately 200 sheets remaining of the 500 that were loaded last week. You check the supply cabinet. There are 4 reams of 500 sheets of standard 80 gram per square meter office paper, sufficient for at least 2 weeks of normal usage. You note the supply level in the maintenance log. Paper is a consumable that receives considerably less attention than toner in most offices, and considerably more attention from you, because you understand that paper is not a passive medium in the printing process. It is an active participant, and its properties directly affect print quality, jam frequency, and the long-term condition of the printer's internal components. Paper for laser printing is specified primarily by its weight, measured in grams per square meter, abbreviated GSM or GM2, and by its surface finish, which ranges from uncoated to lightly coated to heavily coated. Standard office paper is 80 GSM, uncoated. It is the correct choice for the vast majority of office printing tasks. It is dimensionally stable under the heat of the fusor. It feeds reliably through most paper paths. It is compatible with the electrostatic transfer process, and it is relatively inexpensive. Heavier papers, 90 GSM to to 120 GSM, can also be used in laser printers that support them, but they require more fuser energy to achieve complete toner bonding and may need to be fed through a different paper path configuration, typically a straight-through path that avoids the tighter curves of the standard document path. The moisture content of paper is a more significant factor in laser printing than most people realize. Paper absorbs moisture from the air, and paper with elevated moisture content causes several problems. First, moisture in the paper generates steam in the fuser, which can condense on cooler components further along the paper path and cause intermittent electrical faults or mechanical problems. Second, moist paper tends to curl as it passes through the high-temperature fuser, which can cause jams at the exit point or produce curled output. Third, moisture affects the paper's surface resistivity, which influences how well the electrostatic transfer of toner from the drum to the paper works. High humidity conditions are associated with reduced image density and patchy toner transfer. The standard practice for mitigating paper moisture issues is to store paper in its sealed ream packaging until it is needed, and to store the sealed reams in a climate-controlled environment rather than near exterior walls, near the floor, or in an uninsulated storage cupboard. You have moved the paper supply from the bottom shelf of the storage cupboard, which is adjacent to an exterior wall and noticeably cool in winter, to a middle shelf away from the wall. This took 2 minutes and required no equipment. Paper quality problems in the months following this relocation decreased measurably. You noted this in the maintenance log without any particular satisfaction, because it was the expected outcome of a correct decision, and expected outcomes of correct decisions do not require particular satisfaction. Paper that has been left in the paper tray over a weekend in a dry, heated office may lose moisture and become statically charged, leading to multi-sheet feeds where the printer pulls 2 or more sheets simultaneously instead of one. The resulting double-sheet feed either jams the printer because 2 sheets of paper are thicker than the paper path expects and will not pass through the registration nip cleanly, or produces a printed page with a blank sheet fused to it, which is not the correct output. You address this by removing partially used paper stacks from the tray at the end of the week and storing them in their original ream packaging, and by fanning a new stack of paper before loading it into the tray at the beginning of the week. Fanning separates the sheets and reduces static charge. It is a small action with a measurable effect. Specialty papers introduce additional considerations. Coated papers, such as those used for high-quality photographic or marketing printing, require specific fuser temperature and speed settings because the coating changes the paper's thermal properties. Most modern laser printers have a media type setting that adjusts the fuser parameters for different paper types. Using a coated paper with the printer set to standard office paper settings will result in incomplete toner fusing and a print that smears or flakes. Using a heavy paper with the printer set to coated paper settings may result in overfusing and slight paper browning at the edges in extreme cases. You know the correct media type, settings for each type of paper used in this office, and you have documented them in a laminated reference card attached to the side of the printer. Because the correct settings are not obvious, and because you will not always be the person at the printer when a specialty paper job needs to be run, labels require particular attention. Adhesive labels for laser printing are sheets of labels on a backing paper designed to pass through the laser printer with the labels intact and the adhesive unactivated until the label is peeled from the backing. The fuser temperature that bonds toner to paper is also sufficient to activate many adhesive compounds, and labels that are not specifically designed for laser use can delaminate inside the fuser, depositing adhesive on the fuser roller. Adhesive on the fuser roller is one of the most serious maintenance problems that can arise from incorrect media selection, because the adhesive is heat activated and spreads as the roller operates, contaminating an expanding area of the roller surface and transferring to every subsequent page. Recovery requires fuser roller cleaning that is more aggressive than routine maintenance and may require fuser unit replacement if the contamination is severe. You have a laminated sign above the specialty media shelf that says, "Check that labels are rated for laser printing before use." The sign has been there for 3 years. In that time, no adhesive has been deposited in the fuser. The sign is working. At 10:15, a colleague appears at your desk. The expression on their face is a specific expression that you have seen many times, and that means the same thing every time. You say, "Paper jam." They say yes. You go to the printer. The printer's control panel is displaying an error message and a diagram showing the location of the jam in the paper path. The diagram indicates that the jam is in zone 2, which on this printer corresponds to the area between the registration rollers and the transfer zone. This is one of the more common jam locations. You press the control panel button that illuminates the access point for zone 2, which is a green indicator light beside the upper access panel on the left side of the printer. You open the upper access panel. Before you remove any jammed paper, you look. Looking before pulling is the first rule of jam clearance, and it is the rule most frequently violated by people who are in a hurry to resume printing. A jammed sheet of paper in a laser printer may be under tension from the rollers on either side of the jam. If you pull the paper without understanding the tension, you risk tearing the paper, leaving a fragment in the paper path that will jam the printer again immediately, potentially in a location that requires fuller disassembly to access. Torn paper fragments in inaccessible locations are the direct consequence of hurried jam clearance. You look first. The jammed sheet is approximately half fed into the transfer zone. The leading edge has reached the drum surface, and you can see that the toner image was beginning to transfer when the jam occurred, because the leading portion of the sheet has a partial print on it. The sheet is held at the registration rollers at one end and at the transfer zone entry at the other. It is under mild tension. The correct direction of removal is forward, in the direction of paper travel, rather than backward against the registration rollers, because pulling backward can leave paper fibers on the registration roller surface, and in extreme cases can damage the roller mounting. You grasp the sheet gently at the leading edge, apply slow, steady tension in the forward direction, and draw it out of the paper path. It comes free without tearing. You examine the removed sheet. It is a full sheet with no tears. There are no fragments remaining in the paper path. The partial toner image on the forward portion of the sheet is consistent with the jam occurring during transfer, which is consistent with the Zone 2 location indicated by the control panel. You fold the sheet and set it aside for disposal. You examine the visible paper path for any additional debris. There is none. You close the upper access panel. You look at the paper path entry point. You can see a slight misalignment in the paper stack in the tray. The sheets at the top of the stack have developed a slight upward curl at one edge, which is consistent with paper that has been sitting in a dry environment and losing moisture differentially from one face. The curl at the stack edge can cause the leading edge of a sheet to feed at a slight angle, which then causes a registration error and a jam. You remove the remaining paper from the tray, fan it thoroughly, and reload it with the curled edge face down. Reloading with the curled edge face down means the paper curls away from the registration rollers rather than toward them, which reduces the likelihood of a misfeed. You press the resume button on the control panel. The printer processes the queued jobs, and the output emerges correctly. The jam is resolved. Total time, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. You noted in the maintenance log, Zone 2 jam, cause identified as paper curl from dry conditions, resolved by fan and reload, no component damage, no paper fragments. The log entry takes slightly longer than the jam resolution. This ratio is acceptable. Your colleague retrieves their document from the output tray. The document is complete. All pages printed correctly. They thank you. You say it was a curl issue and suggest they fan the paper before loading it next time. They nod in the way that people nod when they do not intend to remember what they have just been told. You note in the maintenance log that staff guidance on paper handling has been provided. The guidance, once given, is documented. Whether it is followed is a separate matter over which you have limited control. At 11, the black toner cartridge level drops to 28%. You had noted it at 31% this morning. 3% of a cartridge in 2.5 hours is a higher consumption rate than recent weeks, which suggests a heavier print volume today. You check the print queue in the printer management software on your workstation. There are several large documents queued, a 40-page report, a draft manual with embedded graphics, and a batch of form letters. The heavy queue explains the elevated consumption rate. You access the supply cabinet and locate the spare black toner cartridge. You have one in stock. You do not open it yet. The current cartridge at 28% has approximately 300 to 400 pages of printing remaining at standard coverage, which is the industry measure of toner consumption based on 5% page coverage, meaning 5% of each A4 page surface printed in solid black. 5% is a standard that dates from the early years of laser printing, when it was established as a reference point for cartridge yield ratings. Real-world coverage varies significantly. A page of dense body text might have 8 to 10% coverage. A page with a full bleed photographic image might have 30% coverage or more. And a page with a simple letter and small logo might have 3 to 4%. The actual yield of a toner cartridge in any given office environment depends entirely on what is being printed. You calculate 300 to 400 pages at current Q volume will last approximately 2 to 3 working days. Your reorder arrangement is next business day delivery. You have one cartridge in stock. You are therefore covered for the current cartridge, the one in stock, and the one on order. This is a comfortable position. You place the reorder now, noting the cartridge model number, the supplier, and the order date in the maintenance log. The model number is written on a laminated card attached to the inside of the supply cabinet door, alongside the model numbers for all other consumables for this printer. You installed this card on your second week in this role. Before the card existed, ordering the correct consumable required either looking at the printer manual, looking at the spent cartridge, or guessing. The card eliminated 2 of those options. At 11:45, the black toner warning light activates on the control panel, indicating the toner is now below the low toner threshold, which on this printer is set to 10%. This is the automatic alert that would notify someone who is not you and who does not have a proactive monitoring practice. For you, it is redundant information. You already know. You retrieve the spare cartridge from the cabinet. You will replace it now rather than waiting for the empty warning, because the empty warning is less predictable in its timing and may activate during a time-sensitive print job. You open the toner access panel and remove the current cartridge. You hold it level and gently rock it from side to side 4 or 5 times. This redistributes the remaining toner within the cartridge and can extend the usable life by allowing toner that has settled at one end to reach the developer roller. The printer manual specifies this procedure when a low toner warning is displayed. It is a legitimate technique, not a folk remedy. You rock the cartridge. You look at it. You set it aside. You are not going to reinstall the current cartridge. You have a fresh one. The rocking procedure is something you do out of habit and completeness, and because the slight additional yield it provides on a cartridge you plan to continue using is worth the 30 seconds. In this case, you plan to install the new cartridge because the current one is now at a level where it is likely to trigger the empty warning and stop printing partway through one of the queued documents, which is an inconvenience. Installing the new cartridge now means uninterrupted printing for the remainder of the day. and well into the following week. You remove the new cartridge from its packaging. You remove the protective tape that seals the toner exit port during shipping. The protective tape is orange on most cartridge brands and is labeled PULL, which is the most useful label in the history of packaging. You pull it. You shake the cartridge gently once more to distribute the toner evenly from the outset. You slide the cartridge into its slot, following the guide rails until it clicks into position. You close the access panel. The control panel displays a brief initialization sequence as the printer registers the new cartridge, then returns to the ready state. The toner level display now shows the new cartridge at 100%. The printer is ready. You place the partially spent cartridge in a resealable bag and label it with the date and the approximate remaining level, 28%. You store it in the supply cabinet as an emergency spare. A cartridge at 28% is not a dead cartridge. If the new cartridge develops a defect, or if the reorder arrives damaged, the partially spent cartridge can be reinstalled. Emergency spares are not waste. They are a buffer against the unexpected, and the unexpected happens in offices with a frequency that justifies maintaining a buffer. You note the cartridge replacement in the maintenance log. Black toner cartridge replaced. Previous cartridge at approximately 28% stored as emergency spare. New cartridge installed and initialized. Replacement on order from supplier. Order confirmation, number noted. The log entry is complete. You return to your desk. After lunch, you turn your attention to the network and driver configuration, which is an aspect of multifunction printer maintenance that is less visible than the physical maintenance, but equally important for reliable operation. The multifunction printer is connected to the office network via a wired Ethernet connection. It has a static IP address, which is an Internet Protocol address that does not change between sessions. Assigning a static IP address to the printer is important because the workstations in the office are configured to communicate with the printer at a specific address. And if that address changes, every workstation loses the ability to print until the address is updated in the driver configuration. Dynamic IP addresses, which are assigned automatically by the network's DHCP server and may change each time the printer restarts, are appropriate for devices where the address does not need to be known in advance. They are not appropriate for a shared network printer. The static IP address is set in the printer's network configuration menu and is documented in the network records maintained by the IT department in the printer maintenance log and on the laminated card inside the supply cabinet door. You open the printer's web interface in your browser. Every modern network printer has a built-in web server that serves a management interface accessible from any computer on the same network. You navigate to the printer's IP address. The web interface opens. You review the status page. Current toner levels confirmed. Page count 87,462 pages, updated from this morning. No active errors. Network connection status. Connected. Link speed 100 megabits per second. The printer is on the network and communicating correctly. You navigate to the firmware section of the web interface. Printer firmware is the software embedded in the printer's internal memory that controls its operation. The print engine, the paper handling, the network communication, the control panel, the scan function, and the fax function, if applicable. Firmware updates are released by the printer manufacturer periodically and may address security vulnerabilities, fix bugs that cause specific error conditions or print quality problems, improve compatibility with new operating system versions, or add new features. Failing to update firmware means the printer may be running software with known defects that have been corrected in subsequent versions. Running a network-connected device with unpatched security vulnerabilities is a risk that is beyond the scope of this script, but is noted here because it is relevant to the maintenance of network-connected printers. Specifically, the current installed firmware version is compared against the latest available version on the manufacturer's support website, which you opened in a separate browser tab before accessing the printer web interface. The versions are the same. The printer is running the current firmware. You note this in the maintenance log. Firmware check performed. Current version confirmed. No update required. This takes 4 minutes and produces no action, which is the correct result of a proactive check. The absence of required action is the desired outcome of preventive maintenance. You note it and move on. You review the printer driver installation on the 2 workstations that were recently assigned to new staff members. Printer drivers are the software components installed on each workstation that translate the print instructions from applications into the specific command language the printer understands. Your printer uses the PCL 6-page description language, which stands for Printer Command Language, version 6, a format developed by Hewlett-Packard and widely adopted across the industry. The driver translates a document's formatting instructions into PCL 6 commands that specify each dot, each line, each color value, and each sheet handling instruction in the format the printer's engine expects. An outdated or incorrectly installed driver is one of the most common causes of unexplained print quality problems: slow printing, incorrect page formatting, and print jobs that fail silently, meaning the job is sent, but nothing prints and no error is displayed. On the first new staff workstation, you verify that the correct driver version is installed and that the driver is configured with the correct default settings. The correct paper size, the correct default paper tray, duplex printing enabled by default, and the correct color management profile for this printer. All settings are correct. On the second workstation, you find that the driver was installed with the incorrect default paper size. The size is set to letter, the American standard of approximately 21.6 by 27.9 centimeters, rather than A4, the international standard of 21 by 29.7 centimeters used in this office. The difference in length between the two sizes is approximately 1.8 centimeters. On a correctly configured printer, this difference would produce a warning or a paper size mismatch error. On this printer, in the default configuration, it produces output that is printed at a slightly reduced scale to fit the A4 paper, resulting in pages with wider bottom margins than expected. This error has presumably been occurring since the workstation was set up 3 weeks ago. You correct the paper size setting. You note the correction in the maintenance log. You also verify that the scan function is correctly configured on both new workstations. The multifunction printer's scan function allows users to scan documents directly to their workstation or to a shared network folder. The scan function requires a separate software component, the scan driver, and a configuration file that specifies the network folder destination, the default scan resolution, and the default output file format. You verify that the scan configuration is present and correct on both workstations. It is. You note this. In the early afternoon, you perform the monthly color calibration. Color calibration is the process of adjusting the printer's output so that the colors it produces correspond as closely as possible to the colors specified in the documents it is printing. This matters because the colors that appear on a computer monitor are produced by emitted light, while the colors on a printed page are produced by reflected light from toner deposited on paper. The two systems have fundamentally different color gamuts, which is the range of colors they can reproduce, and the relationship between a color value specified in a document and the toner mixture needed to produce that color on paper is not fixed, but varies with the toner density, the paper type, the drum condition, and the fusor temperature. Calibration establishes the current relationship between specified and produced color and adjusts the printer's output accordingly. You initiate the calibration process from the printer's web interface. The printer first performs an automatic density calibration, printing a series of test patches internally and reading them with a built-in optical sensor to adjust the developer voltage and drum exposure settings for each of the 4 toner colors. This takes approximately 3 minutes and requires no paper. The result is an adjustment to the internal parameters, controlling how much toner is deposited for each color at each density level. You watch the progress indicator on the web interface. The calibration completes. The interface displays the adjusted parameter values. They are within normal range. You then print a color test chart from the web interface. The color test chart is a standardized page containing solid color blocks for each of the 4 primary colors and their combinations, a grayscale gradient from white to black in 20 steps, a skin tone sample, a series of fine lines at different orientations, a text block in various point sizes, including 6-point text, which is the practical minimum for laser printing at standard resolution, and a registration test pattern showing whether the 4 toner layers are aligning correctly with each other. You examine the printed test chart. The color blocks are visually consistent with the expected colors for this printer and this paper type. You compare the printed chart against the reference chart in the printer's documentation, which shows the expected appearance of the test chart on the specified paper type. The comparison is qualitative rather than quantitative. You are looking for obvious deviations in hue, density, or consistency rather than measuring precise color values. A more rigorous color management approach would involve a colorimeter, a device that measures the precise color values of printed patches and generates an ICC color profile, an International Color Consortium profile, that can be used by applications to translate document colors into the printer's specific color space. Your office does not require this level of color precision. You are printing business documents, not commercial artwork. The qualitative comparison is appropriate. The grayscale gradient shows smooth, even steps from white to black with no banding, which indicates that the black toner density curve is correct and that the fuser is operating consistently across the full density range. The fine lines are sharp and without fringing at all orientations, which indicates that the imaging resolution is correct and that the drum is in good condition. The registration test pattern is a set of crosshairs printed in each of the 4 toner colors and intended to overlap precisely. Correct registration means all 4 crosshairs are coincident, and any offset between the crosshairs indicates a registration error between the toner layers. You examine the registration pattern under a loupe. The crosshairs are coincident to within 1 printer dot, which at the standard resolution of 600 dots per inch is approximately 4/100ths of a millimeter. This is correct registration. The text block in the test chart is legible at all sizes down to 8-point, and the 6-point text, while small, is sufficiently resolved to be read under magnification. The printed 6-point text shows no fill-in between letter forms, which is the characteristic defect of overtoned or under-resolved printing, where small letter forms lose their counters. The enclosed spaces inside letters like O, E, and a fill-in at small text sizes indicates either excess toner density or insufficient imaging resolution. Neither is present. The test chart is satisfactory. You note the calibration complete, and the test chart results in the maintenance log. You file the printed test chart in the maintenance folder with the date written on the reverse. This folder contains 12 test charts, 1 per month, going back to the previous year. The sequence provides a visual record of the printer's color and quality performance over time, and allows you to detect gradual changes in output quality that would not be apparent from a single chart in isolation. The automatic document feeder, abbreviated ADF, is the component that allows the printer to scan or copy multi-page documents without requiring each page to be placed on the flatbed scanner glass manually. It sits on top of the printer, above the flatbed glass and consists of a paper tray that holds up to approximately 50 sheets, a set of feed rollers that pull sheets one at a time from the tray, a scan path over the scanner lamp, and exit rollers that deliver the scanned pages to a collection tray. In most modern multifunction printers, the ADF feeds paper over the scanner glass while the glass remains stationary, rather than using a separate scan head. This means that the scan quality from the ADF is dependent, in part, on the cleanliness of the narrow strip of scanner glass beneath the ADF paper path. You open the ADF cover and examine its components. The ADF feed rollers are similar in function and material to the main paper feed rollers, and they develop the same characteristic glazing over time. You clean them with isopropyl alcohol on a lint-free cloth, rotating each roller to reach its full circumference. The ADF separator pad, a small rubber pad that presses against the feed roller to prevent more than one page feeding at once, is also examined. The separator pad wears over time as the rubber surface erodes from repeated contact with the paper and the roller. A worn separator pad allows multiple pages to feed simultaneously, producing multi-feed errors where two or more pages are scanned as one. The current separator pad shows wear, but is within the usable range. You note it for monitoring. You clean the ADF scan glass strip. This is a narrow strip of glass, approximately 3 centimeters wide, and the full width of the scanner, mounted below the ADF paper path. As documents pass over this glass during scanning, paper fibers and dust particles accumulate on the glass surface. Contamination on this glass strip produces a vertical line or streak running the full length of scanned documents. Because the contamination blocks the scanner lamp's illumination of that point on the document, resulting in a dark line at the corresponding position in every scanned image. This is one of the most common scan quality complaints, and one of the most straightforward to remedy. You apply a small amount of the isopropyl alcohol solution to a lint-free cloth and wipe the glass strip from end to end in a single smooth stroke. You repeat with a dry cloth to remove any alcohol residue. You examine the glass under a light. It is clear. You also clean the main flatbed scanner glass, which is the large glass surface used for scanning single pages, books, and documents placed manually, rather than fed through the ADF. The flatbed glass is more accessible than the ADF strip and accumulates similar contamination. Though because it is horizontal rather than vertical, it tends to accumulate more dust and occasional fingerprints from users placing documents on the glass. You clean it with the same method. Alcohol on a lint-free cloth, single directional stroke, followed by a dry cloth. You close the ADF cover. You run a test scan of a reference document that you keep for this purpose. A single-sided page with printed text at various sizes, a grayscale gradient block, and a fine line test pattern. similar in content to the color test chart, but intended for scan quality verification rather than print quality verification. You place this reference document in the ADF tray and initiate a scan to your workstation at the standard scan resolution of 300 dots per inch, which is the typical setting for scanning text documents. The scan completes. You open the resulting image file and examine it. The text is sharp and fully legible at all sizes. The grayscale gradient is smooth. The fine lines are resolved without fringing or dropout. Most importantly, there are no vertical streaks or lines in the image. The ADF glass is clean and the scan is satisfactory. You note the scan test result in the maintenance log. At 3 in the afternoon, a second colleague arrives. They are holding a printed document. The expression on their face is a different expression from the one this morning. This expression means not a jam, but a quality problem. They hold up the document. You look at it. The document has a faint, regular horizontal banding pattern across the printed area. Alternating bands of slightly darker and slightly lighter print, repeating at intervals of approximately 1 centimeter, visible in the solid gray areas and in the dense text, but not in the white margins. The banding is not severe, but it is noticeable, particularly in the gray background areas of a table that occupies the lower half of the page. You take the document and examine it under raking light, which you produce by holding the page at an angle near the window. The banding is confirmed. The pattern is consistent across the full width of the page. It is a horizontal band pattern, meaning the bands run perpendicular to the direction of paper travel. In the laser printing process, a defect that produces a regular horizontal banding pattern is most likely related to the developer unit or the toner density control, because the developer unit has a rotating component, the developer roller, and a regular periodic defect in the developer unit produces a pattern that repeats at intervals corresponding to the developer roller circumference. You estimate the band interval at approximately 1 centimeter. You consult the service manual specification for the developer roller circumference in this printer model, approximately 1 centimeter. The interval matches. Horizontal banding correlated with the developer roller can have several causes. The first is developer roller contamination, a deposit on the roller surface that reduces toner delivery at that point in each rotation. The second is developer roller wear, a worn patch in the roller's conductive coating that alters the electric field between the roller and the drum at that position. The third is insufficient toner. A cartridge that is nearly empty may not deliver toner evenly to the developer roller, resulting in density variations. You have just replaced the toner cartridge, and the new cartridge has been printing for approximately 2 hours. It is not an empty cartridge problem. You access the printer's diagnostic menu through the control panel. The diagnostic menu provides access to test prints and engine parameters not visible in the standard user interface. You print a developer test pattern, which is a standardized internal test page that prints at a consistent density setting designed to highlight developer unit irregularities. The test pattern shows the same horizontal banding, confirming that the problem is in the printer's internal processes rather than in the document file being printed. You remove the drum unit and the developer unit from the printer. In your printer model, the drum unit and developer unit are separate components that can be removed independently. You examine the developer roller surface under the work light. You rotate the roller slowly by hand, examining its full circumference. At one point on the roller circumference, you observe a faint deposit, a thin layer of compacted toner that has accumulated at this position and is partially blocking the magnetic brush that transfers toner to the drum. This is developer roller contamination. You use the soft brush to gently clean the contamination from the developer roller surface. Developer rollers are sensitive components. They are magnetized internally to create the magnetic field that controls toner delivery, and their surface coating is a thin sleeve of conductive material. You do not use alcohol or any liquid solvent on the developer roller, as this can damage the surface coating. You use the dry brush only, with light strokes, rotating the roller as you clean. The deposit disperses. You examine the surface again under the work light. The contamination is removed. You reinstall the developer unit and the drum unit. You print the developer test pattern again. You examine it. The horizontal banding is reduced significantly, but not entirely eliminated. There is a faint residual banding at the same interval, less pronounced than before. You print 2 copies of the original document that your colleague brought to you. You examine the output. The banding is visible in the gray table background under close examination, but is no longer apparent in normal reading conditions. This is an acceptable outcome for a cleaned developer roller. The faint residual pattern suggests that the developer roller coating has some surface wear at this position that cannot be corrected by cleaning. The developer unit is a candidate for replacement. You check the printer's page count against the developer unit replacement threshold in the service manual. The recommended replacement interval for the developer unit is 150,000 pages. The current page count is 87,480 pages. The developer unit is at approximately 58% of its rated life. The early development of a contamination pattern at this mileage is not unusual. The rated replacement interval is a conservative average based on typical use conditions, and actual component life varies with the specific print content and environment. The developer unit is not at the replacement threshold, but its current behavior warrants monitoring. You note in the maintenance log, developer roller contamination found and cleaned during print quality investigation. Partial improvement confirmed. Residual minor banding noted. Developer unit to be monitored for further degradation. replacement to be considered if banding increases. You return the document to your colleague with a brief explanation. The developer unit had a contamination issue which has been cleaned. The print quality should be acceptable for the current document. If they notice further banding, they should let you know. They look at the test print you have produced. They say it looks fine. You agree that it looks fine. It does look fine. You go back to your desk. The multifunction printer is equipped with an automatic duplex unit, which enables double-sided printing without manual intervention. You spend a portion of the afternoon reviewing the duplex configuration and confirming that it is being used appropriately across the office. Because duplex printing reduces paper consumption by approximately 50% for documents printed on both sides, which is a material and environmental consideration that the organization has a stated commitment to, and that is also straightforwardly cost-effective. The duplex unit is a mechanical assembly that takes a page after its first side has been printed, holds it, reverses it, and feeds it back through the paper path for printing on the second side. The geometry of this reversal path is precise. The page must be returned to the paper path at exactly the correct position and orientation to ensure that the second side image is correctly positioned relative to the first side image. If the duplex registration is slightly off, double-sided documents will have a visible misalignment between the front and back sides, which is referred to as backup registration error. You verify the duplex registration by printing a test page with registration marks on both sides and holding the printed page up to the light to check the alignment. The marks align correctly. The duplex unit is correctly calibrated. You review the default duplex setting in the printer driver on a sample of workstations. The driver default for duplex printing should be enabled for most print jobs in this office. You find that on approximately half the workstations, the default is set to single-sided printing. This is the factory default for many printer drivers and has not been changed during the driver installation on these machines. You update the default to duplex on each workstation and note the change in the maintenance log. You also note a figure. If the office prints an average of 2,000 pages per month, and half of those pages are candidates for double-sided printing, enabling duplex as default could save approximately 500 sheets per month. 500 sheets per month is 6,000 sheets per year. You note this in the maintenance log, not because it changes the maintenance procedure, but because it is a number that will be useful when discussing paper consumption with the office manager. The printer is also equipped with a staple finisher, a module that collects multiple printed pages and applies a staple to a specified corner. The staple finisher is used infrequently, perhaps twice per week, for reports and multi-page documents. Its maintenance requirements are minimal. It requires occasional replenishment of the staple cartridge and periodic removal of the staple waste bin, which collects the small metal fragments produced when a staple is clinched. You check both. The staple cartridge is approximately 60% full. The staple waste bin is approximately 40% full. Neither requires immediate attention. You note their levels in the maintenance log for future reference. You also check the hole punch module, which is a secondary finisher that punches binding holes in printed pages before they are delivered to the output tray. The hole punch module's maintenance requirement is the removal of the hole punch waste bin, which collects the small circular paper discs produced with each punch. The waste bin in this module is nearly full. You remove it, empty it into the recycling bin, and replace it. This takes 30 seconds. If the bin had been allowed to fill completely, the printer would display a hole punch waste bin full error and suspend all punch-enabled print jobs until the bin was emptied. The error would have been resolved in the same 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds would have occurred at a less convenient time in response to a complaint from whoever had sent a time-sensitive document to the printer. You empty the bin now. You note it in the maintenance log. The multifunction printer is a network-connected device that processes documents containing information of varying sensitivity. In most offices, the printer's security configuration receives considerably less attention than the security configuration of computers and servers. This is an oversight because the printer has access to every document sent to it, stores a copy of recent print jobs in its internal memory, and in some configurations, stores a copy of every scanned document as well. The printer's web interface, if not password protected, allows anyone on the network to view its configuration, change its settings, and in some cases, access its job history. You have configured the printer's security settings. You review them today. The printer's administrative password was set when the device was installed. The factory default password, which is either blank or a trivially guessable combination like admin or the printer's model number, was changed to a complex password that is stored in the password management system used by the IT department and documented in the printer maintenance log in a separate, access-controlled section. You access the web interface using the administrative password and review the security configuration. The printer's job history, which stores the names of recent print jobs in the device's memory, is set to clear automatically after 24 hours. This setting prevents the accumulation of a record of printed documents on the device. The automatic clearing is not a substitute for physical security, because a document that has been printed and left in the output tray is available to anyone who walks past. The physical security of the output tray is a separate matter, addressed by the office's document handling policy, which specifies that sensitive documents should be collected immediately after printing and not left in the tray unattended. Your role in this is to ensure the policy is technically supported, which the job history clearing does. Whether the policy is observed is, again, a separate matter over which you have limited control. The printer's IPsec configuration, the network security protocol that encrypts communication between workstations and the printer, is enabled. This means that print jobs sent over the network are encrypted in transit and cannot be intercepted by another device on the same network segment. This is the correct configuration for any network printer handling documents with any degree of sensitivity. You verify that the IPSEC certificates are current and have not expired. They are valid for another 247 days. You set a calendar reminder for 90 days before expiry to renew the certificates. A security certificate expiry on a network printer does not necessarily prevent printing, but it will trigger error warnings on workstations and may cause print jobs to fail, depending on the workstation's security settings. You prefer to renew certificates in advance. You set the reminder. The printer's USB ports are configured to accept only media inputs, not programming inputs. Some printer models allow firmware to be loaded directly from a USB storage device, which is a feature intended for service engineers, but which represents a potential security vulnerability if the port is accessible to any user. On your printer, the USB port firmware update function is disabled and can only be re-enabled through the administrative web interface. You verify this setting is in place. It is. You review the printer's email configuration, which is used by the Scan to Email function. The Scan to Email function allows users to scan documents and send them directly as email attachments from the printer's control panel. The email configuration uses an authenticated SMTP connection to the organization's mail server, requiring a service account password that is stored in the printer's configuration and not visible to users. You verify that the SMTP authentication is configured correctly and that the service account password has not expired. The service account password policy requires rotation every 90 days. The current password was set 62 days ago. You note the expiry date in the maintenance log and set a reminder 20 days before expiry. If the password expires without being updated in the printer's configuration, Scan to Email will stop working and will produce an authentication error at the printer. Expiry of service account passwords is one of the most reliably timed sources of unexpected printer failures, and it is entirely preventable with a reminder and 5 minutes of configuration work. You set the reminder. The physical environment in which a laser printer operates has a direct effect on its performance and longevity. You have given some attention to the placement and environment of this printer over the years and have made several adjustments that are not recorded in any official document, but that have meaningfully improved its reliability. This section is an account of those adjustments and the reasoning behind them. The printer is positioned in a dedicated alcove adjacent to the main office area, approximately 3 meters from the nearest workstation. The alcove provides a degree of acoustic separation from the main office, which is relevant because a laser printer in operation produces approximately 50 to 55 decibels of noise. Not loud enough to interfere with conversation at normal distance, but present enough to be noticeable and mildly distracting in a quiet office environment. The placement in the alcove reduces the noise impact on the main workspace. The printer is positioned on a dedicated printer stand rather than on a desk surface. The stand raises the printer to a height that is ergonomically appropriate for most users when loading paper or retrieving output. It also provides a shelf below the printer on which the paper supply, the maintenance kit, and the reference cards are stored. Most importantly, the stand allows air circulation under and around the printer, which is relevant because the fuser unit generates significant heat during operation, and the printer's internal fans exhaust this heat through vents on the side and rear panels. Obstruction of these vents causes the printer to run at elevated internal temperatures, which accelerates the wear of heat-sensitive components, including the drum unit, the developer unit, and the fuser roller bearings. You have ensured that the area within 30 centimeters of the printer's ventilation vents is clear of obstructions. No paper stacks, no filing boxes, no accumulated mail, no coffee cups, no plants, and specifically no paper that has been placed on top of the printer. Paper placed on top of the printer is a phenomenon that occurs in offices when the output tray is full, and the person who has collected their documents does not know where to put the remaining output. It is understandable. It is also a source of contamination, because paper on top of a warm printer can slowly bake and release sizing compounds that enter the ventilation system, and because paper on a printer inevitably slides off eventually and lands somewhere inconvenient. You have placed a small sign on top of the printer reading, "Please do not place paper here." The sign has been displaced 3 times in 2 years. You have replaced it 3 times. It is currently in place. The temperature and humidity in the printer alcove are within the manufacturer's recommended operating range, 15 to 30 degrees Celsius, and 10 to 80% relative humidity, non-condensing. The alcove is not directly under an air conditioning vent, which is important because a cold air stream directed at the printer can cause condensation on internal components during periods when the office is cold and the printer is warming up. The original placement of the printer before you moved it was directly under an air conditioning vent. You relocated it to the current position after a summer of intermittent humidity-related print quality problems. The problems resolved after the relocation. You documented this. The power supply to the printer is a dedicated circuit with a surge protector. The printer is a relatively power-hungry device. It draws approximately 700 to 900 watts during fuser warm-up and 100 to 200 watts during normal printing, dropping to less than 10 watts in deep sleep mode. The surge protector protects the printer's electronics from voltage spikes on the power supply, which can cause intermittent faults and, in severe cases, damage to the printer's control board. The surge protector is inspected annually for signs of aging. The indicator light should show that the protection circuitry is active. The housing should show no signs of heat damage or discoloration, and the unit should not make any sound during normal operation. You inspect it today. The indicator light is on, the housing is undamaged, and the unit is silent. The surge protector is functional. You note this in the maintenance log. The printer is also connected to an uninterruptible power supply, UPS, a battery-backed power device that provides several minutes of battery power in the event of a main power interruption. The purpose of the UPS for a printer is not to allow printing to continue during a power outage, which would be impractical for more than 1 or 2 pages. The purpose is to allow the printer to complete its shutdown sequence correctly in the event of a power interruption. A laser printer that loses power abruptly while the fuser is at operating temperature and a print job is in progress may jam paper in the fuser in a way that is difficult to clear, may leave the fuser roller in contact with the pressure roller under heat without the rotation that prevents flat spot deformation of the rubber, and may corrupt the printer's job memory and configuration data. The UPS provides the 30 to 60 seconds of power needed for a controlled shutdown. The UPS battery should be tested annually and replaced every 3 to 5 years. You check the UPS indicator. The battery is charged and the self-test status shows healthy. The battery was replaced approximately 18 months ago. It is within its useful life. You note this. Near the end of the day, you complete the monthly maintenance log entry. The maintenance log is a document that you began keeping in the 2nd month of your responsibility for this printer, when you realized that you were accumulating observations and repairs that were useful in aggregate, but that you would not be able to recall accurately in isolation. The log is a printed form, 1 page per month, filed in a binder in the supply cabinet. It is also maintained in a digital spreadsheet on the shared drive, updated from the printed form at the end of each month. The printed form is the working document. The spreadsheet is the searchable archive. The maintenance log has columns for date, task performed, components inspected or replaced, consumable levels noted, print count at start of period, print count at end of period, any incidents and their resolutions, and notes for next month. You fill in today's entry in full. Print count at start of period, 86,912. Print count at end of period, current, 87,504. Pages printed this month to date, 592. This is lower than last month's total of 741 pages, which is consistent with the perception in the office that November is a quieter month than October. The page count data, accumulated across months, provides a baseline from which consumption rates can be predicted and consumable reorder cycles can be planned. You have 12 months of page count data. The average monthly print volume over those 12 months is 683 pages. The maximum was 894 in March, which was a month with several large proposals and a compliance report. The minimum was 411 in August, when the office was partially closed for summer. Toner consumption this month. Black toner replaced once during the month. Previous cartridge at approximately 28%, replaced at low toner warning threshold. New cartridge installed and initialized. Replacement on order. Colored toner levels at 44, 58, and 67%. No replacement required. Drum unit page count. 34,206 pages against a rated life of 100,000 pages. Developer unit page count. 87,500 pages against a rated life of 150,000 pages. Fuser unit page count. 87,500 pages against a rated life of 200,000 pages. You record the 2 incidents from today. The Zone 2 paper jam caused by paper curl, resolved by fanning and reloading. No component damage. And the horizontal banding print quality issue caused by developer roller contamination, resolved by cleaning, partial improvement confirmed. Developer unit flagged for monitoring. You record the maintenance tasks performed. Paper path cleaning, feed roller cleaning and assessment, Fuser roller cleaning, ADF roller cleaning, flatbed and a DF scan glass cleaning, color calibration and test print, firmware check, driver configuration review and correction on one workstation, duplex default settings, updated on multiple workstations, security configuration review, UPS inspection, surge protector inspection, hole punch waste bin emptied. You record the notes for next month. Feed rollers approaching replacement threshold at 100,000 pages to be replaced at next monthly maintenance. Developer unit to be monitored for recurrence of banding. Black toner reorder confirmed for delivery before current cartridge depletes. SMTP password rotation due in approximately 28 days. Reminder set. IPSEC certificate renewal due in approximately 217 days. Reminder set. You sign the maintenance log. Your signature means that the maintenance was performed, the observations are accurate, and the noted items are genuine. The signature is a small formality in a document that no one else reads, and that exists primarily because you decided it should exist. You sign it with the same seriousness that you would sign any professional document, because the seriousness is not for the audience. It is for the practice. You close the binder and return it to the supply cabinet. You update the digital spreadsheet. You save the file. At 5 o'clock, you perform the end-of-day procedures for the printer. These are brief but consistent, and their consistency is the point. You check the print queue one final time through the printer management software. The queue is empty. All jobs submitted during the day have completed. There are no held jobs, no failed jobs, and no jobs in error state. The queue is clear. You note this. You check the output tray. It is empty. The last printed documents were collected by their owner approximately 20 minutes ago. A full output tray at the end of the day means printed documents have been abandoned, which is an information security concern and an organizational efficiency concern. At this printer, in this office, the output tray is reliably collected before close of business because the workstations are near the printer and most users collect their documents promptly. You note the empty output tray. It is empty. This is correct. You check the paper level in the main tray. Approximately 350 sheets remain. You load an additional 150 sheets to bring the tray to approximately 500 sheets, which is its capacity and the appropriate level for an overnight configuration. A full paper tray at the start of each day means that the first print job of the morning encounters a full tray rather than a depleted one. This is a minor convenience that costs 1 minute of attention at the end of the previous day. You load the paper. The tray is full. You verify that the specialty paper trays, the secondary tray that holds letter-headed paper, and the manual bypass tray that holds specialty media, are empty and correctly configured. The letter-headed paper tray should not be left loaded overnight because the headed paper is printed stationary, and leaving it in the printer overnight in a warm, dry environment can cause the pre-printed ink to offset slightly onto adjacent sheets if the paper is warm and under slight pressure in the tray. You remove the letter-headed paper from its tray, count the sheets, note the count, and return them to the letterhead box in the supply cabinet. The tray is empty. You set its media type configuration to empty in the printer's paper configuration menu, which prevents the printer from selecting this tray automatically for print jobs sent without explicit tray selection. An empty tray configured as a paper source will generate a paper empty error when a job tries to use it. You set it to empty. The error will not occur. You allow the printer to enter its deep sleep mode, which it will do automatically after the configured timeout period of 15 minutes of inactivity. In deep sleep mode, the fuser temperature drops to near ambient. All non-essential electronics power down, and the printer's power consumption drops to approximately 3 watts. The printer remains on the network and will wake within approximately 20 to 30 seconds of receiving a print job. Modern laser printers in deep sleep mode are ready to print much more quickly than the first generation of energy-saving sleep modes, which could require several minutes to warm the fuser before printing could begin. 30 seconds is an acceptable wait time. The energy saving over a night and weekend of deep sleep relative to standby mode is measurable. And at scale, across the full working year, is a contribution to the organization's energy consumption that is proportionate to the size of the device. You do not power the printer off completely at the end of the day. A cold start from fully off requires a longer fuser warm-up sequence than a wake from deep sleep, produces more thermal stress on the fuser components through the rapid heating cycle, and in some printer models resets certain calibration parameters that were established during the current operating session. The deep sleep mode is the correct overnight configuration for this printer in this environment. The printer will sleep. In the morning, it will wake. This is an appropriate arrangement. You gather your notes from today's maintenance work. The pocket notes are transferred to the maintenance log, which you have already completed. The notes themselves are discarded. They have served their purpose, which was to ensure that details observed during the day were not lost before they could be documented formally. The documentation is complete. The notes are no longer needed. You discard them. You turn off the task light in the printer alcove. You return the maintenance kit to the supply cabinet and verify that the cabinet is fully stocked for the coming month. Isopropyl alcohol, lint-free cloths, compressed air, cleaning pads, brush, spare feed rollers still in packaging, drum cleaning sheet. All present. The cabinet is locked. The supply situation is documented. The printer is in deep sleep. The output tray is empty. The paper tray is full. The log is complete. The day is complete. You have completed a full day of multifunction laser printer maintenance. During this day, you performed the monthly physical maintenance of the paper path, the feed rollers, the fuser roller, the ADF components, and the scanner glass surfaces. You monitored and managed the toner supply, replacing the black cartridge and placing a reorder for its successor. You reviewed the network configuration and firmware, corrected a paper-sized driver error on one workstation, and updated duplex defaults across multiple workstations. You performed the monthly color calibration and filed the test chart. You responded to 2 incidents, a Zone 2 paper jam caused by paper curl, and a horizontal banding issue caused by developer roller contamination. You reviewed the security configuration, confirmed the UPS and surge protector condition, and emptied the hole punch waste bin. You completed the maintenance log in full and performed the end-of-day shutdown procedure. You noted 4 items for follow-up. Feed roller replacement at next monthly service, developer unit monitoring, toner reorder confirmation, and 2 calendar reminders for password and certificate renewals. None of these tasks appear in your job description. Your job description describes your actual role in the organization, which is unrelated to printer maintenance. You do this work because you once looked at the printer when it stopped working, and you fixed it. And from that moment, you were the person responsible for the printer. The printer has, over the 7 years since that moment, printed approximately 340,000 pages. Reports, proposals, invoices, forms, letters, compliance documents, meeting agendas, draft contracts, expense claims, employee handbooks, presentation slide decks, labels, notices, and the occasional personal document that no one mentions and you do not ask about. 340,000 pages of information that the organization needed to exist in physical form, produced reliably and at acceptable quality, available when needed and not when not needed, consuming the correct quantity of toner and paper and electricity, managed by someone who reads service manuals and logs maintenance intervals and notes that the developer roller circumference in this printer model is approximately 1 centimeter. The printer does not know any of this. The printer is a machine. It does not know that it is well maintained. It does not know that the fuser roller was cleaned this morning, or that the paper in the tray was fanned before loading, or that someone checked its firmware and found it current. It prints because its components are in working order, and its consumables are correctly supplied, and its paper path is clear. The reason they are in working order, correctly supplied, and clear is you. You will do this again next month. The toner will be at a different level. The page count will be higher. There may or may not be a jam. There may or may not be a quality issue. The banding may recur, which will tell you that the developer unit needs replacing, and you will replace it. The feed rollers will reach 100,000 pages, and you will replace them. The fuser roller will eventually need replacement. The drum will be replaced. The printer itself will eventually be replaced. And when it is, you will learn the new model's service manual with the same thoroughness with which you learned this one. Good night. The printer is in deep sleep. It will wake in approximately 8 hours when the first print job arrives. It will be ready.